Okay, guys, we're going to continue to talk about these 2020 rookie draft prospects. But before we do, I need to put out this announcement. This is for the Patreon members and for the people in the Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues that I run. If you do not have your league dues in by the 14th, you need to make sure that you do get those in. And if I have not heard from you by the 14th, I have not received any dues. I'm going to put the team as empty. It's open. I'm going to let new Patreon members take it in the dispersal. Well, I'm throwing all the teams in dispersal draft, and then we'll draft from there. But if you want your spot saved for next year, make sure you get those league dues in. Now let's get into it. We're going to talk about Cam Akers, and this is a very, very polarizing prospect. I see some people have him all the way up at their running back 1 spot, and I see people have him down at like RB7, RB8. Now, I'm going to just kind of say where I think he should be in the rankings and in the tiers at the end of the video. But first, let's go through it. Let's talk about the type of running back he is, how his college career went, and what I believe his talent profile is going into 2020. Now, we look at him from a build. We always know that we want these running backs to be a little bit bigger. We can't have the Devin Singletaries on our Dynasty team. I know a lot of people love those little scat backs, but I want the running backs that have the high BMI. I want the running backs who are going to be capable of being 3-down workhorse running backs in the NFL, because that's what wins you your league. And Cam Akers has that. He goes to the NFL Combine. He checks in at 5'10", 217 pounds with a 31.1 BMI. And if you look at this puts him in the 71st percentile, more than adequate. He is capable of handling that workload strictly from a body composition standpoint. And that's really one of the most important boxes that we're going to check from the NFL Combine. And now the next most important thing, in my opinion, from the NFL Combine at the running back position is this speed score. I just got done making a video about CeeDee Lamb, explaining why the speed score isn't that big of a deal for wide receivers, how that position's more about just overall skill rather than athleticism. But at the running back position, you need to be fast. You need to be fast for your size, because we want to be able to have breakaway runs. This is why I told y'all not to draft David Montgomery last offseason and to draft Miles Sanders instead. If you don't have that speed score, I don't want you. If you can't break off a 70-yard touchdown run, your ceiling is capped. I know it's crazy to say because those plays are so far and few between, but we want the running backs who have big playability. So do NFL teams. NFL teams don't want a running back that's only going to be able to get 4 yards every rush. That's just too inefficient. That's just too small for the modern day NFL. So perfect. He checks the box. He runs a 4.47 40, a 108.7 speed score, which is speed score. If you haven't been following the videos, it's taken from playerprofiler.com. It's a metric that combines a player's size and their speed, and this puts him in the 89th percentile. So super great. Love to see that box checked. Now let's get into what he did in college and his overall production profile. Now, going into college, he was a dual threat quarterback and one of the highest rated players coming out of the country. And he was rated the 59th highest player ever. Not just that year, highest rated high school player ever. So we see that he has the highest highest high school pedigree. He could have gone to any college he decided to, yet he decides to go to Florida State, which we're going to talk about later in the video, but this is horrible for him. I mean, Florida State was the worst situation possible. If you had the chance to watch any of their games, it was horrendous. And I'm going to break down what he did his freshman, sophomore, and junior seasons. Freshman year, 13 games, 194 carries, over 1,000 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, 16 receptions, 116 yards, and 8 total touchdowns. Now, what's important about here is, it was a very impressive freshman year. He was a very young freshman. He broke Dalvin Cook's record for freshman year rushing, and that's really what you want to see coming out as a freshman. You can't expect anything better than that. But we kind of did expect that, just because how highly he was being talked of as a high school player. So he comes in, proves that he can do it. And what's most important about this, in my opinion, and this is going to be the entire trend for his entire college career, because We know that rushing the ball, running the ball is extremely hard to do without a decent quarterback, without a decent offensive line, because the situation he finds himself in throughout his college career is he is facing stacked boxes with an offensive line that I think we had Tyler Moss on here about a month ago, and he gave me the stat that PFF graded them. I could be wrong. Please comment if I'm wrong, but I think that they gave the offensive line a grade of 113th in the nation. And we know about their quarterback play, how they could not move the ball, how they could not keep safeties back. So he was in a situation where he was facing stacked boxes, similar to what Derrick Henry saw in 2019 at the NFL level. But the difference between the two is Derrick Henry had an elite offensive line, so despite facing stacked boxes, he was at least able to kind of make room and face like what I would compare as an average offensive line without a stacked box. But Cam Akers did not have that opportunity. Cam Akers had to go against a stacked boxes constantly with a horrendous offensive line. So it's going to be a lot more important to look at his receiving stats rather than his rushing stats, due to his rushing stats being so closely linked to his situation. So now his sophomore year, he comes in, and in 12 games, he has 161 carries, 706 yards. This is only good for a 4.4 yards per carry, and this is horrendous. This is considerably drops his draft stock. If you looked at, I don't know if any of y'all play Devy, but if you follow around these dynasty values, we see that these players in college, their value changes throughout the season. And nobody was talking about Cam Akers after his sophomore year. He was on a couple people's sleeper watch, but he fell down a lot, and this was mainly due to situation, in my opinion, because we look at those receiving stats. He had 23 receptions, 145 yards. This is the most important thing looking at these running backs. We want them to have the size, we want them to have the speed, we want them to have the ability to catch the ball. So Cam Akers has proven through his first 2 college seasons that he checks all of those boxes, and he goes in his junior year, and this is what really rises his draft stock once again back to where it was after his freshman year. His 11 games, 231 carries, 1,100 yards, 5 yards per carry, 30 receptions, 225 yards, and 18 total TDs. Now, super impressive, especially when it comes to those receiving numbers. Like I said, Cam Akers is one of the best receiving running backs coming into the NFL. The only player I'd put ahead of him is maybe DeAndre Swift. So we love to see the running back with the size, with the athleticism, with the ability to play on third down. And I'm going to be overlooking his lack of rushing production. So let's talk about where he could end up going in the NFL draft, because this is going to be extremely, extremely important for his dynasty value. And before the combine, I was kind of down on Cam Akers just because I knew there was going to be someone in every one of my leagues that was higher on him than I would be, just because he was being mocked to a lot of NFL teams at the end of the 3rd round, beginning of the 4th round of the NFL draft. And y'all know how important it is for these running backs to get draft capital, way more important than the wide receivers, just because with running backs, the position is so dependent on the opportunity that these teams are going to give them. And we really only know that the team's going to give the running back opportunity if they are willing to take a significant investment on them in the NFL draft. So after the NFL Combine, now mocks are having him go in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. And if this is the case, I'm all in on Cam Akers. I think he will check every single box that we want him to, and he will be a significant producer year 1, and his dynasty value will skyrocket. Now let me go through these teams in the later round 2 range where I could see him going, and a lot of these teams, I'm going to do a little spoiler, a lot of these teams are great landing spots. We're going to start at pick 45, where Walter Football recently had Cam Akers mocked, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, if he goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he slides into that tier 1 of running backs. He's right there with Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, depending on where they land as well. But he is going to vault up into tier 1. I see him right now as a tier 2 running back prospect, but that would be an ideal situation. Another team who I think this is maybe the most likely outcome that he lands on, just because they have 2 picks in this range where I could see him going, and this is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons pick at 47 and 55. Obviously, this is going to be a great spot because we know that the Falcons are most likely going to have to move on from Devontae Freeman this offseason, just because He is getting paid way too much. He's way too old, way too injured. And if Cam Akers slides in as their starting running back with no clear RB2 behind him, he is going to skyrocket into that tier 1. Now, one bad spot I could see him going to, and I know y'all are going to tell me in the comments, y'all hate the spot. Y'all not only hate the spot, y'all are hating that I'm even mentioning this as a possibility, because it's kind of a shot at their current starting running back, Devin Singletary, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Now, I know a lot of people are very excited about Devin Singletary going into 2020. Everyone thinks he has the job locked up. I'm looking at it as the Buffalo Bills took a running back that is tiny, that they have yet to show that they're willing to give him a full workload over a significant stretch. They were more willing to give Frank Gore half of his touches. Frank Gore, I believe, who's 60 now? And it just shows that they're not fully confident that he can handle a full workload. They only spent a third-round NFL draft pick on him last year. They have no one else in the running back room. I think it's possible that they take a running back a lot higher than people are projecting, and that kind of ruins Devin Singletary's value. But it would also be a horrible spot for Cam Akers, because I don't think he would be able to completely send Devin Singletary to the bench. I think that they would work off 50-50 of each other, and that would kind of bump him down a tier for me. Now, another great spot, we're going to kind of finish the video off with fantastic spots from here on out, and that is the Houston Texans. Obviously, the Houston Texans have a significant amount, I would say a decent amount invested in that running back position. They traded like a pick that was way too high for Duke Johnson for how they used him. I think they gave either a third or a fourth round pick. They gave they gave nothing for Carlos Hyde, but they were very unimpressed with Duke Johnson. They decided not to use him. So I could see them going with Cam Akers here, and that would be an ideal landing spot with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Now, one more spot that would be fantastic. This is one of the best running back spots I could possibly see. And honestly, he might be a value if he goes here, just because they have a starting running back right now. So people may bump down his 2020 projection, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. If the Baltimore Ravens decide, hey, we're a well-rounded team, let's spend a luxury pick on a running back and take him with the 60th overall pick, I think Cam Akers' long-term outcome is sky high, just because that offense is going to be one of the best offenses in the league for a very long time. Running backs are going to find it very easy to run there with Lamar Jackson taking so much of the defense's attention that would be a fantastic landing spot. Now, at 61, we see the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, this will only make sense if they decide to let Derrick Henry walk in free agency, but that is a team that is kind of opposite to what Cam Akers saw in Florida State. The Tennessee Titans have an elite offensive line. Cam Akers running behind there would be better than anything he has experienced in a long time. And now, where everyone wants to see, they interviewed him at the NFL Combine. If this happens, he will be the first overall pick in rookie drafts. I'm confident in saying that. I know it sounds a little reckless, but that is the Kansas City Chiefs at 63. Can you imagine? Cam Akers, an extremely athletic, extremely explosive running back with pass-catching ability with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the league's best offense with no competition for touches. Now, that is a round 2 Dynasty startup player. Doesn't matter if he gets taken at the end of the second round. That situation is so ideal. Obviously, everyone wants it. The Chiefs have a lot of holes on defense, so it would be kind of surprising if they went here, but they did interview him, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. Now, I will mention there is some downside with Cam Akers, especially if you're drafting before the NFL draft, because like I was saying, we are not sure he's going to get the draft capital. We're not sure that he's going to be taken in the second round. If he falls to day 3 of the NFL draft, he could be one of these running backs that just has a backup gig for a year or two and then is washed out of the league. I know it's crazy to say. I know on one hand I'm saying that Cam Akers is a fantastic running back and could be the best running back in the class, and on the other hand, he could be a player that's never even a fantasy producer. But that's what's so difficult about these running backs. Running backs are so dependent on opportunity that it's kind of hard to go all in on talent when we want to kind of base situation, opportunity, and talent and weigh them all equally. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much, guys, for checking out the video. If you have not subscribed, what are you doing? Come on. Have a great day.